Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we're going to be reading creepy encounter horror stories. I hope you enjoy them. So without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories. This just happened to me this morning. I'm a 33-year-old female and I'm staying at my parents' home for a few days. They live sort of semi-rurally. Lots of houses around, but also a lot of farmland. I went for a run at about 6:20 this morning. Sunrise was about 6:45 a.m., so it was just getting light. I'm running up the main road, lots of houses, and a dark blue camper van with an orange surfboard sticker in the back window drives past me. This isn't that strange because we're on the coast, so there are a lot of surfers. I did clock it though, because whoever was driving went past me slower than I'd expect with no other cars on the road. I carried on for another couple of kilometers, doing a loop I'm very familiar with, when the same van drives past me again, also very slowly. I did not run past the van parked on the road, so the only way that's possible is if they stopped on a side street and then carried on. It creeped me out, but I brushed it off assuming they might have driven off to find a shop, or pulled up on a side street to check Google Maps. The next part of the run is just farmland on both sides of the road with no houses. I'm a bit creeped out at this point, so I decided to run the farm side of the hedge, dividing the road from the fields. I also turn off my music so I can hear any cars. I'm jogging along that field when I hear an engine, so I stopped running and just kind of slightly ducked and tried to peer through the hedge behind some bushes. That same camper van drove past, and this time I spotted the guy driving. He was looking into the field opposite as he drove past me. It looked like he was looking for someone. To reiterate, he must have turned around to come up this road, because he drove past the turn before. I was pretty thoroughly creeped out at this point, and was tempted to call the police or my parents, but didn't want to overreact. I kept jogging through the field, listening for the sound of an engine. This road is maybe just over a kilometer long. It leads to the coast. At the end, there's a main road and a car park that's always packed with surfing vans, so I had it in my mind that if I get there, it's pretty safe. As I'm coming towards the main road, that van is coming back towards me, with the driver staring directly at me. Thankfully, at this point, there's a few other cars driving up the main road, and a bunch of surfers sat outside their vans maybe 50 meters further ahead, and the camper van just drives past. No idea if I'm misreading the situation, but it definitely felt very creepy. When I was 14 or 15, I used to have absolutely no stranger danger awareness at all. I didn't mind being out at night on my own. Not that I was much at that age. I'd like to go down the streets on my own. Any basic safety techniques just didn't bother me because I thought I'd always be fine. One day I was walking back from town and thought I'd take my usual shortcut down the alleyways behind the high street. I'm quite happily walking when I round the corner into a guy who's loitering, and we lock eyes straight away. I thought the polite thing to do was smile, and thankfully he smiled back. I decide that he's no threat, and walk right by him. Then I hear him say something about my smile. I shout thanks over my shoulder and carry on. I turn down another corner. So does he, now saying he likes my trainers. So I yell another thanks. He asks where I got them from. I say I don't know. Now I'm speeding up because this dude's definitely following me. I turn down onto the main road where I know there'll be people, hoping this will deter him. Nope. There he is following behind, still trying to get me to engage. I come to a busy crossing, and I know he's about to catch up to me. As safely as I could, which was probably not that safely, I bolt across the road, leaving him waiting on the other side, still shouting something at me. I ran across another road and dived into a convenience store and called the person who was looking after me at the time, who told me to stay there. And she was coming to get me. Whilst I'm on the phone with her, I see the man round the corner looking around. He's even checking between cars and everything. Thankfully, he gave up pretty quickly and seemed to leave. My care worker called the police and 2 officers came, but they weren't overly concerned. I guess he hadn't technically done anything. Interestingly, they did seem to know from the description who he was likely to be, and said that they are in touch with the people who work with him, and will feed it back. Anyway, about 4 days later, I go to a coffee place I used to read in not far from there. It didn't even cross my mind I might see him again. In my head, it was all sorted. Done. Dusted. I take a seat near the toilets and start reading when the toilet door opens, and the big blue coat that I'd described to the police a few days earlier emerges. I stare at him in fear. He briefly regards me, then carries on past. I have no idea if he recognized me or not. It didn't seem like it. Safe to say, I'm a lot more careful now. This happened to me last week, and I've been scared, but I didn't know if I wanted to post it until today. I'm still living with my parents, so naturally I still have to do chores around the house. Washing the dishes, cleaning the house, etc. Since it was Monday and trash day in my neighborhood is every Tuesday and Thursday, my dad reminded me to take the trash out. It was late, and usually I would have already done it by then, but I was studying and it slipped my mind. I have a long driveway and it's not exactly well lit, so going out there isn't my favorite thing to do at night. Usually I take 1 trash can at a time, and this time was no different. But as I was on about the 3rd one, I noticed some older looking guy walking slowly on the other side of the street, with his hands in his pockets. We made eye contact for a second, but after I set the trash can down, I turned away quickly so that I could get the other one. I was a bit unsettled, but didn't want to just run back into the house because I still had a few trash cans to go. So I decided that I would just push through and get the rest of them. When I grabbed the next trash can to take it up, I noticed that the man was still staring at me. Thinking back on it, I probably should have handled it better, because you just never know with people these days. But instead, I had my mind set on taking the rest of the cans up. No joke, this man watched me as I took each of the rest of those trash cans up, and when I went back into my house after I was done, he was gone. I told my dad, and he told me that if something like that happens again, to run back into the house and call him or the cops. Well, the reason I decided to post this is because it happened again today. I didn't want to crap myself, so I decided to take the trash right out after I got home from school. And since my dad leaves right back out after he drops me off to pick up my little sister, I wanted to do it before he got back. The moment that I stepped back out to deal with the trash, a Chevy truck drove past slowly, and I could see the man in the passenger seat with his seat reclined a bit, like he was trying to hide his face from me. There was another man in the driver's seat, and once he noticed that I saw him, he accelerated away. Maybe I'm overreacting, but my gut is telling me that something is off and I can't ignore it. What should I do? When I was about 15, 8 years ago, I had a few eerie encounters with my dad's friend. My dad was abusive growing up and on drugs pretty heavily. My dad was doing some renovations on our back porch, and had his friend was helping him out. The first time I met him, his vibes were immediately off-putting. He had a little boy about 5 years of age. His wife stayed home a lot, and he didn't work much. After meeting me, he kept asking my dad if I could babysit his son so his wife and him could go out on a date night. I reluctantly agreed after being asked more than a few times. The night of babysitting his son, everything was fine, until he returned home. He sat on his couch and asked me about the night, He then kept offering for me to sit on his lap. I kept declining. I lived a few blocks away, so I decided to walk home. He kept attempting to find ways to get me to stay. He asked if I wanted to stay and play with his son, but I grew more uncomfortable. I finally walked home and told my dad about it. He brushed it off. He also tried to constantly hug me, and one time he sat next to me on the couch while he came over and tried to put his hand on my leg. His friend continued to come over to help my dad on his renovations. He started to make comments about how I am mature for my age and I have a womanly figure. He'd constantly stare at me and began to stop by more frequently. I lived in a small town that was pretty safe. The town graveyard was huge and had a lot of trails. It was also literally in my backyard behind my fence line. I'd walk my chihuahua there every day. He lived right across the street from the entrance of the graveyard. One day, as usual, I was walking my dog. I usually put in my earbuds and listen to music. A particular part of the trail was secluded with trees and pretty hidden. I was always observant and paranoid, so I'd frequently check my surroundings. As I was walking through the secluded area, his truck was slowly creeping behind me. I took my earbuds out and quickened my pace. He sped up, coming to a stop and rolling down his window. He then proceeded to tell me that he was going to the store and that he could take me home afterwards if I went with him. He also mentioned that he knows my dad, so I was safe. I told him that I was headed home and I didn't need a ride. He was persistent and kept saying that my little dog was tired from walking and it would just be a quick stop to the store, which was all the way on the other side of town. After a while, he was agitated that I said no and finally drove off. I heard a few months later that he went to jail for beating his wife with a hammer and strangling her. She apparently divorced him, and he broke into her house and tried to kill her. My dad believed me about everything that happened, and he was so upset. He finally cut him off. Haven't seen the guy since. I still think about it from time to time, and I'm grateful that I wasn't harmed by him. I live in a very small town where everyone knows everyone else. Last weekend, a girl walked up to my porch and said she had a friend who wanted to get to know me and asked if I was single. I told her I was, and she asked for my number. I didn't see the harm in that as I'm open to meeting new people. Big, dumb mistake on my part. I'll never do that again. She left, and about 5 minutes later I received a text from the guy. And it turns out I have known of this person for almost 30 years, but we've never met or spoken to each other in person. He told me he thought I was pretty, and he'd like to get to know me better, and asked if he could stop by to talk in person. I said that was fine. This guy shows up with 4 other people, and it was immediately clear to me that they were all on drugs of some sort. I hadn't seen him for a very long time, so I was not expecting how he looked. His name is Carrie. And he didn't have a single tooth left in his mouth, and he might have weighed 110 pounds and 5'7" at most. I was immediately regretful. Not only were all his teeth missing, but he had no job, no car, no money, and is currently homeless. I recognized immediately that this guy is trying to find a home for the winter, and he thinks he's going to date me. It's obviously that he thinks very highly of his looks and his charming ways. Honestly, his flirting was extremely repulsive. I got rid of him by making up an excuse that I had to be somewhere. 4 days later, my doorbell cam captured a video of Carrie walking up to my porch steps, where he decided to sit with his back to the camera. He turned and looked directly at the camera twice. It gets creepier a few days later. I woke up Friday morning at about 5:30 a.m. and decided to smoke a cigarette. I don't smoke inside, and since I caught him sitting on my porch steps, I would check my camera for any sight of him, and I did not see anyone, so I stepped out and smoked. I was half asleep and staring down at the street when I heard a voice. My head snapped up, and I'll be danged, he was standing less than 3 feet away from me. I nearly jump out of my skin. and I screamed at him and said, "You just scared the crap out of me. What the actual crap is wrong with you?" I truly have no idea what direction he came from, and how he was able to walk up on my porch without making a single sound. He laughed until he saw that I was furious. Then he started explaining that he was there to tell me that his phone had died, and wanted to know if I'd tried calling or texting him. The only text I sent to him was asking him why the heck he was sitting on my porch at 3:47 a.m., and he never answered. Leaning in towards me trying to flirt with me after creeping me the heck out, he says, "Good morning, sunshine." Oh, I wanted to slap him in the face. I told him, "I am not a morning person at all, so you need to go." He started explaining again why he was there, and then he started pouting and walking away very slowly, and kept turning back to look at me like I was going to change my mind and invite him in or something. It was unbelievable. My doorbell cam actually recorded part of this interaction. After that, he started watching me from a half a block away, in front of a bowling alley that has a bench and directly lines up with my front door. For 2 days, he watched my every move. It even started pouring rain, and he just sat there watching me. I haven't seen him around in a couple of days, but I'm hoping he moved on to someone else. But my intuition is saying that he isn't done just yet. Cops know all about it. My son works for our sheriff's department and filled them in. This is one of the creepiest encounters I've ever had, and I'm a paranormal investigator. I've always said that it's with the living you gotta worry about, and this just goes to prove it. The other day, I went to the clinic and parked in the parking lot dedicated for the building. It was the afternoon, but still bright outside. There's always sketchy people and homeless around the city, but I don't generally encounter dangerous things in this area. I walked to my car and sat in it for a bit, calling my boyfriend with an update. My car was parked right beside a sidewalk, so when I saw someone come up from the driver's area, I didn't think anything too sketchy of it. But when I turned my head, I noticed a lady peering into my car as she slowly walked by. She stopped a short distance from my car on the sidewalk and just stood there. There's no bus stop there. No reason I can think of to wait there either. Just on the sidewalk in front of my car. She was carrying a large backpack, another bag, and looked like she was listening to music. I noticed this lady glance at me a few times while I was on my phone. I didn't think too much of it at the time. She then came walking back by my car, slowly and looking into my car. This time she went behind my car and stood there with her back towards the car. She was pretty much standing in the middle of the parking lot. I peered in my rearview mirror, and she was swaying back and forth, and had big headphones on. I noted to my boyfriend of the suspicious behavior. She glanced backwards into my rearview mirror approximately 3 times. At this point, I figured this person was up to no good, and was worried she was looking for an opportunity to rob me. When vehicles drove past her on the parking lot, she wouldn't even move for them. My boyfriend advised me to start the car and start backing up to see what she would do. The second I started my car, she turned around to look at me, then went back to the sidewalk and took off down the street. I don't know if this person was waiting for me to get out of my car to rob me, or if she was waiting for an opportunity to try and steal my car. But this whole thing has made me feel super unsettled all day. I'm a female, and when I was 16, I was walking to a store near my house. I was a huge pothead and would walk to the neighborhood nearby to get my stuff, and then take a shortcut through said neighborhood to the store to get blunt wraps. I was walking through an abandoned apartment building, and a very nice dressed man was walking through and asked how I was doing. I ignored him and kept walking. In the area I was walking, there's not really white men in suits, so I was thrown off. I get to the store, and I'm walking back, and a white truck is parked in the corner of the apartment building, so I opted to go to the long way on the busy street. The truck drove up to me, and the same man jumped out and picked me up so fast I didn't even have time to think. I was only 100 pounds at the time and wasn't nearly as strong as him. I tried to scream and hit him with my elbow, but no luck. A lady that's heavily on drugs that's always walking around my city came running at us and yelling to put me down. He actually put me down and sped off. Almost 10 years later, I always stopped to give that woman food and actually just paid her to get the rehab, and now she's doing great, reunited with her grandchildren and working. Not as creepy as some of these other stories on here, but definitely never walked alone again after that. So I'll keep this as short as I possibly can. But basically, my friends and I in high school would always ride our bikes and swim in the local loch during the summer. My one friend had mentioned a spot he had found where he had put a rope swing and some rocks we could jump off of. So we decided to just check out the spot since we were in the area. We ventured off pretty deep into the woods, and it took a bit longer than we expected. It was almost 7 to 8 p.m., so the sun was setting and I was kinda trying to just go back. I had to use the bathroom, so I just walked into the woods a bit as my friend walked a bit ahead. I told him I'll catch up to him in a second. So while I'm doing my business, I hear someone talking pretty close by. I kind of just double-checked if anyone else was around, or my friend was just messing with me, and I didn't see anything. So I kinda wanted to investigate, and walked a bit closer to the shore, and I spotted an old man, maybe 70 to 80 years old, with a yellow rain jacket and an old 80s radio in his hand, just speaking what I thought was a foreign language. So I was kinda hiding behind this tree so he wouldn't see me, and he starts what it looked like as praising this radio, just holding it above his head as some type of idol. He then starts talking and got on his knees, and was just talking gibberish or whatever it was. It didn't sound like anything I had ever heard of. I'm pretty familiar with languages and dialects. I got a bit freaked out, but right when I was about to leave, my friend was coming up behind me, wondering what was going on. It caught the attention of the old man, and he just turned around and looked at us. My friend said hello, and he just turned back around, and we just bolted off. I never had such a weird experience before. I just felt like he was performing some ritual, or was some crazy old guy in the woods, waiting for people like us to stumble upon him. But I had never told anyone about this until now. Just a weird encounter that didn't seem real now that I look back at it. When I was 17 many years ago, I was on my way to town alone. It was pouring rain, cool outside. I saw a girl who looked around my age hitchhiking and stopped to pick her up. I lived outside a very small town at the time, and possible danger never crossed my mind. She was kind of quiet during the 45-minute drive, so we listened to music. When we got to town, she had me pull over at a gas station. She pulled this huge freaking knife from her backpack, laid it on her thigh, and said, "I will never forget this. I was going to kill you and take your car, but you're a sweet kid. Don't ever pick up hitchhikers." Then she got out of the car and walked away. I had never been so shocked and terrified in my entire life, and I've not picked up another hitchhiker either. After I graduated college circa 1976, I returned for a weekend. I partied with friends and was driving home across Wisconsin. I picked up a hitchhiker early on and took him a couple hundred miles. drop him off no problem. Next day, I find a folding hunting knife with a 6-inch blade next to the passenger seat. I've always wondered why the knife was out. Was he afraid of me and thought he needed defense? Was he a killer and decided not to kill me? Or did it just drop out of his pocket? So, I live in a quite touristy area of a big city. It's quite safe, I would say. However, 2 weeks ago in the morning, I went grocery shopping. Halfway through my 5-minute walk, I bumped into this 45 to 50-year-old odd-looking guy. His whole head is shaved except for an extra long thin ponytail at the back of his head. We were walking in opposite directions, and we had brief eye contact. I felt creeped out by the way that he looked at me. I kept walking towards the shop, and a couple of minutes into my shopping he was there, so he definitely changed direction. Maybe to follow me? The supermarket was quite empty, and I had a lot of time on my hands, so I decided to just aimlessly walk along different aisles in the hope that he would leave. He didn't. He just followed me across the aisles. I texted my partner and asked him to come pick me up, as I was pretty weirded out at this point. But then it looked like I lost him, so I told my partner not to come anymore. This man actually waited for me outside the shop and stared straight at me. I ignored him and just kept walking. I took a different route to avoid going home in case he was following me. And he did follow me. But then I had had enough and just ran and escaped him. In the meantime, I bought an alarm, and I've been going to the shop with my boyfriend only. We learned that he lives around there, and we see him almost daily, or at least once every 2 days. I hate that I have to be careful when I go to the shop. Always take my boyfriend with me if possible, to watch my back, etc. I think I'm being watched at my job. Let's start with the basics. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I work at a blind store where I'm alone during my shift. I work from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. from Monday to Friday. It's a very simple job, and most of the time I just look at my computer, do some customer service, offer quotation to the very few people that enter the store, and so on. So like I said, it's very boring and not much happens. But lately, something started to catch my attention. I've noticed that across the street, someone is looking directly at the store. More precisely, looking at me. I don't handle cash at the store. We mostly work with credit or debit card, so I don't think that they're planning on robbing the store or something like that. I've noticed that there is a telescope in the window, and it's pointed directly at my desk, so I think it's very obvious that this person is looking at me. I've left my phone recording while I do some work for like an hour. And then I can see the recording that this person moves the telescope once in a while, and that when I go to the restroom, the telescope moves while trying to find me. So yeah, I've not seen the face of this person or anything, but surely enough, this is creepy. Update 1. Okay, so thank you guys for all of the comments and responses this post had. I didn't expect this to get any attention, so here goes some more info about the situation I'm in, and more details about the store. 1. This person is looking at my desk through a door, so my blinds can't protect me here. In addition to this, I moved the desk closer to a wall so this person can't see me anymore. I just did this because I was getting video proof of the person's behavior. 2. I just found out about the stalker this Tuesday. I don't know if he or she has been doing this for weeks. I just noticed now, so I'm already being really careful when I get off work. And 3. After reading all of your suggestions, I've decided to go and have a little chat with the building administrator and show her all the evidence that I have collected. I'll do this today, and I may update this weekend if something worth mentioning happens. If not, then on Monday I will update this post. Update 2. So I already showed all of the evidence to the building administrator, let's call her Anna, and she was shocked. More even when she actually saw the telescope showing through the window of the apartment. She told me that the apartment that has the telescope is being used by 2 girls, maybe in their 20s, and these 2 girls are weird. The apartments are small, but they're not cheap, and these 2 girls started living in them almost 2 months ago. She told me that she doesn't see these girls leave the apartment very often, and most of the food and groceries are delivered, so these girls via delivery guys. But something that does occur is that a man comes to the apartment every 2 or 3 days and leaves early in the morning. This man is the one who actually made the rental agreement and pays for the apartment, so he's probably paying the food and rent of these 2 girls. Now, Anna says that when the rental agreement took place, the man said that these 2 girls would be living there because of college, but she hasn't seen these 2 girls go to college or anything like that. So yeah, this is weird. Apparently Anna is going to speak about the issue with the owner of the building, and the man who signed the rental agreement so that this activity, the stalking, stops. I'll update if I learn something else. Final update. Okay, so this weekend I didn't think too much about the situation anymore. I try to enjoy my days off without worrying about my job. So just today I came to work, opened the store and began to work. Then I noticed that the window of the apartment was closed. This window is always open, and I noticed that the telescope was no longer there. I sent a message to Anna, asking if she could tell me anything about the girls, and if something was done about the stalking. Apparently Anna, the building owner, and this mysterious man had a short conversation this Saturday. They called the man on his phone and asked him if they could talk about some complaints about the apartment. Then told the man about the girls harassing the stores in front of the building. Lucky me, they didn't say that I was the one who complained. They told the man that this behavior should stop, because that's not something that tenants should do. So far, the man has been listening and paying attention to these requests. Everything was normal up to that point, but then the building owner made a question. It was a quick question. What career are they studying for? Anna says that the man changed his attitude completely, said that he should mind his own business, and just left. Sunday comes and the man calls Anna to give her the keys to the apartment. He didn't explain why or say anything else. He just gave her the keys and left. Anna is very confused and also worried about the girls, mainly because she didn't see them when they left. I told her that maybe they left early in the morning like the man used to do. I asked if there was something wrong with the apartment, like missing stuff or damaged items, but Anna said that everything was fine. Nothing was stolen or broken. Also, I asked if she heard noises, yelling, or anything that Saturday night. Nothing, she says. She's thinking about filing a complaint with the police because it feels very wrong that they would just leave like that. If you ask me, I think the reason that they left was because the building owner asked about the girls. I don't know what to think about this. If Anna does end up going to the police, I will probably provide my testimony or something if it's helpful. I hope I don't have to update this post again, because I wouldn't want to know more about this than I should. Let me preface this by saying in my early 20s, I was a complete disaster and admittedly made a lot of poor choices. Luckily, I survived, and now I have a treasure trove of interesting stories to tell. When I was 21, I found myself without a place to live. On the first night, I went to a bar where a friend was performing stand-up comedy. I started drinking at probably 2 p.m., so I was pretty gone by the time Creepy Man enters the picture. Creepy Man was a friend of the guy performing stand-up comedy. The 4 of us hang out at the bar until closing. I mentioned to Creepy Man that I don't have a place to stay, and he invites us all over to spend the night. Creepy Man was a decade plus older than the rest of us, and was breaking out into shamanic chants all night long. But a bed is a bed, right? We arrive at his place, smoke weed and drink for a while, and then my friend dips out for the night. Me and the other guy continue to hang out with Creepy Man until I pass out on the couch. I wake up in the morning and I'm alone. Creepy Man gets up soon after and brings out some women's clothes in my size for me to change into. I thank him and pick out an outfit. Then, we talk more about my situation, and he offers for me to stay there as long as I need. He tells me a story about losing his wife and kids, and tells me I remind him of his daughter. We spend the day together. We meet up with a schizophrenic guy collecting rocks that he knows. We split a meal at Burger King. Then we go back to his house. He wants help doing dishes, so of course I help. At this point, he lets me know that the water is shut off, so he has to go get water out of his neighbor's spigot. This is when I start to get suspicious, and it's dawning on me that he is homeless and squatting. It's getting late, and I am an hour outside of the city, so I decide to spend the night and peace out in the morning. He says I can stay in the spare bedroom, and lets me wash up with a bucket of water before bed. I'm in the bathroom and hear him pacing the hallway talking to himself, saying something to the effect of, "I'm not going to do it, don't get any ideas." At this point, I am creeped out and my heart is pounding. I leave the bathroom expecting him to be standing there with a knife, but he's not. He tells me I'm safe and how he's not going to try anything with me because I remind him of his daughter. I smile and he shows me to the bedroom. As we enter the room, he says something like, "Don't be scared of the blood. It's just from homeless men that got in a fight." My heart drops, but I politely say goodnight and shut the door, locking it. I can't remember if it was a bunk bed or not, but either way, I remember staring up at a large blood stain above where the bed is. At this point, I'm 90% sure I am going to be murdered and trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. Creepy guy is still outside pacing around and talking to himself. I decide to wait it out until morning when buses are running again. So I open the window and take off the screen part. I turn off the lights. I stay fully dressed with my shoes on and keep my bag right next to me in bed. I lay there all night prepared to fight and escape at any moment. Luckily, dawn breaks and I'm still alive, so I sneak out of the house and catch a bus back to town. He texts me throughout the day, asking when I'm coming back, and I ghost him. Haven't seen him since, but I occasionally wonder what was going on with that dude and how close I truly was to being murdered, or at least assaulted. When I was a kid, my two younger siblings and I stayed the weekend at our grandmother's house while our parents were out of town. My grandma's long-term boyfriend, let's call him Banks, had moved in with her and would be staying the weekend with us as well. The moment I met him, he immediately gave me the creeps. I don't remember much from our first night there, so I assume nothing out of the ordinary happened. That quickly changed the following morning. My grandma announced she'd be leaving us at home with Banks for a bit so she could pick up groceries. As Grandma left, my brother, sister, and I sat on the living room couch watching TV. Shortly thereafter, I heard Banks emerge from his bedroom down the hall. I listened closely to Banks' footsteps as he approached, and noticed he was more so slowly creeping down the hallway as opposed to walking. I fixated on the doorway where he'd inevitably appear, and when he did, he was crouched down, eyes wide and grinning with his hands positioned as if he was about to pounce towards us. He began running towards us on the couch, yelling, "I'm the tickle monster!" Then pounced on my younger sister, aggressively tickling her while kneeling over her on the couch. Banks is over 6 feet tall, muscular build. My sister is below the age of 10. My sister repeatedly asked Banks to stop, exclaiming, "I don't like it, stop that." My sister let out a high-pitched scream and began to hysterically cry. At this point, I intervened. It sounded like Banks was hurting her, and I didn't like that he was continuing to tickle her while she screamed and cried. I tried inserting myself between my sister and Banks and told him to stop. He wouldn't remove his hands from my sister. I began slapping Banks' arms, telling him let go of her. And once he released his grip, I screamed "run" to my brother and sister. The only thing I remember thinking in this moment was, get away from this man right now.
I ran out of the living room down the hallway and into the first bedroom. My sister followed behind me, then my brother, and as I was closing the bedroom door, Banks caught up to us and shoved himself against the door to prevent me from locking it shut. Miraculously, I was able to lock it before he overpowered me. Once my siblings and I were locked in the bedroom, Banks continued to bang on the door while he repeatedly yelled, "I'm the tickle monster! Let me in! The tickle monster is coming to get you!" Both of my siblings are hysterically crying at this point. I am now overcome with fear of what Banks will do if he manages to gain access to the bedroom. Although I didn't have a phone, I yelled back at him, "If you don't stop, I'm going to call the police." Banks backed off and I heard him retreat back into his bedroom down the hall and close the door. My siblings and I stayed in the bedroom with the door locked until my grandma returned. Banks remained in his bedroom for the rest of the night. The following morning, Banks left the house, and my grandma said he'd be gone for the day working. That afternoon, my grandma fell asleep on the living room couch, and for whatever reason, I decided to go in their bedroom to snoop around. I went into what appeared to be Banks' nightstand, and I found his personal journal. For the most part, it was filled with nonsense and very detailed drawn depictions of sex. Some of the drawings had a bit of a satanic undertone, but at the time I was too young to understand what I was looking at. I began quickly flipping through it and landed on a page with big, bold black and red capital letters. It read, "If you die a virgin, do you go to hell?" Below it was a drawing of a prepubescent nude girl. There were two versions of the girl standing side by side, one where she appears happy and smiley, and the other, her face is more distorted and confused. Typing this out and re-envisioning it makes me feel disgusting. I don't know how to emphasize how disturbing it was. I instantly went numb and dropped the journal, ran to the living room and demanded my grandma call my parents so I could go home immediately. My sister was ultimately covered in bruises from Banks tickling her. Strange, creepy dude.
I just saw another post that made me think about this weird dude that I met last year. So I decided I wanted to do a little story time because I totally forgot this happened to me a bit ago. I'm 20 now, and this happened in like October or November, so not even a year ago. I was homeless and couch hopping with friends or sleeping in my friends' cars, drinking a lot, etc. One of my friends had met this dude in the same neighborhood who they did deals with. This neighborhood is known for old crackheads, basically. So he was a bit younger, but looked like he definitely dabbled in some hard drugs. Sunken face and eyes with scabs on his face. He was generous and welcoming, though. He was obsessed with his cat, so I thought he was an innocent guy. Her boyfriend and I think one or two more people, and I go chill and drink at his house. Cool dude. Little weird, but he was alright. I can get along with weird people. Then a few hours roll by, and everyone's ready to go home, and my friend asked me where I needed to go for the night. I of course didn't have a plan. I never did. He then offered to let me stay there after hearing my situation. I said yes, very hesitantly, because for some reason my skin kind of crawled when he offered. I don't know if it was intuition or what. My friend then insisted and said that I should stay there if I have nowhere else to go. I then agreed and everyone left. He yapped my ear off about spiritual things that didn't make any sense. He then said that he was going to bed and offered for me to sleep in his room. I walked into his room to check it out, and he had a daybed that pulls out another bed at the bottom. So I was like, okay, I don't have to sleep with him, so this could work. Also, I forgot to mention that this is a trailer home that was not well kept up with. Dishes were nasty, piling up, attracting all sorts of bugs. Counters were covered in resin, tobacco, soda. Just looked like it's never been cleaned. The living room was clean, but that was it. He started clearing some clothes off of the upper part of the bed so that he can lay down, and then stopped and was like, never mind, we can both just sleep on the bottom one. I then looked at him and said, "You know what? I think I'll just sleep on the couch. It's okay." He insisted that it was okay and that he wasn't going to be weird, and he was acting like a kid begging me to buy him a toy. I insisted on sleeping on the couch, and he got upset and laid in his bed. Then, like 30 minutes later, he says from the other room something like, "You know what? This is weird. Maybe you should stay here." He proceeds to say that he needs to be alone, and I'm like, "Dude, at this point it's 3 a.m. You're whining because I won't sleep in bed with you. I don't know you." Then he kept insisting on me sleeping in the room with him. I keep declining and say that I'm going to sleep. He says fine, but he's kicking me out in the morning. That was totally okay with me. Morning comes around and he wakes up making pancakes. I then ask if he can drop me off at work since I was working in the morning. He said yes and acted like nothing happened the night before and started yapping my ear off about spiritual stuff again. As it's time to bring me to work and finally leave this man's house, he drops me off at work. I worked all day, and while I was at work at night, he somehow got my number from someone and texted me. He said something like, "Hey, I got a case of beer and some weed if you want to come over." I said that I had other plans. He then texted me and said that I told him I would hang out with him later. I never said that, so I ignored him. He texted me a couple of more times with a question mark and a hello. I ignored all of them and didn't think of him or see him again. Fast forward to, I think, a week or two later. This man comes into my job and asks someone for a job interview. I recognized him and was very scared and did not want him working with me at all. He gets an interview from my manager somehow and he leaves. My coworker came up to me and was like, "Hey, you seen that weird dude that just came in?" I mentioned that I somewhat knew him and that he is, in fact, a very weird dude. He then brought up that maybe he was trying to stalk me. This was a joke at first and we laughed about it, and he continued his work, but did warn managers what I told him, just in case, so the manager emailed him immediately saying that he wasn't hired. I was relieved. Then, I crap you not even an hour later, this kid comes back to my job with a different outfit and asks for a job interview. This time he was looking around the place all sketchy, and I then ran into the bathroom because now I think this man is stalking me for real. Thankfully, the first person that saw him was my coworker, who I was just talking to, and thank God he seems to be a smart, protective man, because he tells the creepy guy that he just came in an hour ago and already got an interview and didn't get hired and that he needed to get out. He left, but not without a lot of arguing. After I got out of the bathroom, my coworker gave me the rundown on what happened and said that the guy was definitely bad news and told me to never go near that guy again, and I haven't. I don't know what could have transpired from it, but it probably wasn't anything good. This story dates back to spring 2016. I was young and fit with very long blonde hair. A total hippie chick that had quit her job to travel the US with my ex at the time, pre-pandemic before the van life/tiny home movement really took off. We left our home in the Midwest of January that year after holiday celebrations, saying goodbye to friends and family. By sometime in April or early May, we made it to southern Texas and decided to check out Padre Island National Seashore. For those of you unfamiliar with Padre Island, it is a seashore that you can drive right onto with your vehicle. My now ex and I were in a 26-foot Class C 1976 Chevy motorhome. We drove into the island at nighttime, and waking up the next morning was the most insane and phenomenal experience. The ocean was a mere 15 feet away. I mean, the visual was so breathtaking. I will never forget it. We arrived on a Thursday or Friday, and the beach was beyond packed. Another thing for people unfamiliar with Padre, it is where many Texans, high schoolers and college kids mainly, flock for their spring break. Spring break was just the week prior to when we got there, or maybe still going on. Either way, it was busy, and we had an awesome weekend partying away.
During this weekend, we noticed that workers for the park would often drive down the beach. They are very protective of their sea turtle population there, and would slowly drive by in marked vehicles a few times a day. By Monday morning, we awoke to find the entire island emptied out. When I tell you we were literally the only ones both when you looked left or right. We were the only ones for what seemed like miles. It was a gorgeous morning, so I walked the dog quickly and then came inside to sit at our pop-up dining room table to do some journaling. My ex was asleep on the very back couch. We were backed in with the windshield facing the ocean, so of course I took a seat looking towards the beautiful view. Maybe 15 minutes after I sat down to journal, a gray beat-up pickup truck drove by kinda quickly heading towards the direction of the park entrance. That was the first activity I had seen on the island that morning and thought nothing of it. However, maybe 5-10 minutes later, the same truck came driving back past our RV. This time, much slower. The man driving the pickup was going so slow, in fact, that we made eye contact for several seconds as he went back by. He also seemed to drive closer to our vehicle in order to better see inside. Alarm bells should have been ringing at this point, but I kind of just shrugged it off. I was very much in my free spirit phase and was not easily off-put. This is where it really gets creepy. So obviously this guy needed to turn back around since he was driving away from the park entrance again. But I was honestly minding my own business. I kind of immediately put him out of my mind. But yes, several minutes later, another 10 mins, the man came back. But this time, he pulled directly up to our RV with his truck, essentially nose to nose at a 45 degrees angle, to appear as if he were giving a jump. Not far-fetched for a 70s vehicle on the salty beach, blocking us in. It was at this point my heart dropped and I began to get scared. I screamed my ex's name immediately, and up he jumped from the couch. I know he could hear the panic in my voice. I'll never forget how quickly he got up, and how he had his arms spread across while he ducked down to see through the windshield. He was 6'5", very bearded, and I'm 1000% sure the only reason that the man in the gray beat-up truck sped off like a bat out of hell. It took several minutes for my heart rate to return to normal. My ex and I just looked at each other. That was the most unusual encounter on our trip yet. Surprisingly, we stayed another week after that, in the same spot. The idea never entered my head that the man could bring reinforcement and come back for me. Us. I was so very, foolishly, fearless and naive back then. Anyway, it wasn't until later that day that another fact dawned on me. When my ex and I had arrived over the weekend, we only pulled out one camping chair. That one camping chair was in plain sight next to our RV outside. Prior to this spot, we had never done that. We always got both chairs out. But we ended up using driftwood to sit on when we had our bonfires, and so that was nail in the coffin for me. The scary man in the gray truck absolutely thought I was a young girl all alone, and I still wonder to this day, almost 10 years later, what all he had in mind for me that morning.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this situation for a while, even though it could be very much nothing. I, a 19-year-old female, was walking in the city one day on my way to the train home, and I got stopped by a man who was roughly 10 years older than me, and he says that he thinks I'm pretty and he would like to get my number. It caught me off guard and I just agreed to give it to him. I guess my anxiety took over as it was very unexpected. He then starts asking me if I live around the area, if I've driven into the city, and where my car is located if I have, and where I'm currently going and where I've just come from. It seemed odd, and his energy was off. I told him I'd been out the night before, and I'm on my way home, and he gave me a weird look of almost disgust. The way he was speaking, I thought he was going to offer to take me home, because he kept saying like, oh, the train is so far. And I said I may be getting an Uber, and he was saying how expensive that would be. The questions he was asking me started to make me feel uncomfortable, and I was giving false and short answers to end the interaction. But anyways, he tells me his name and then the interaction is over. A few days go by and he messages me. First thing I ask is how old he is out of curiosity, and he says 19, which has to be completely untrue. He looked much older. There was no way that we were the same age. I then Google searched his phone number, and the name connected to it was not the name he had given me. Suspicious that he gave me a fake age and name. We only exchanged a couple of messages, and I didn't respond after the Google search, and I blocked his number as well. But I can't shake the weird feeling that I got from this encounter. Am I overthinking this? Or was this a potential trafficking or kidnapping situation? Thank you so much for listening to all of the stories in this video. I hope you enjoyed them. I also hope that you enjoy the extra rain at the end. Get a good night's sleep, everyone, and I'll read to you in the next video. Bye-bye now.